Hello everybody. I am Azita Talagani, Professor of Persian Language, Literature and Linguistic at the University of Toronto. I welcome you to another inspiring monthly Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies visual lecture series on literature in Persian language pedagogy, jointly organized by the University of Toronto and the University of Chicago. I am co-convening this lecture series with my exceptional colleague and friends, Professor Pune Shabani Jadidi from the Department of Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Chicago. We are grateful for the support of the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies and its director, Professor Mohammad Tawakkoli Targhi, and all sponsoring academic units, University of Toronto, Faculty Art and Science, Department of Near and Middle Eastern Civilizations, Department of Middle Eastern Studies, Division of the Humanities, as well as the Center for Middle Eastern Studies of the University of Chicago, Iran Namak, a quarterly of the Canadian Society of Iranian Studies, and Roshan Cultural Heritage Institute. At the outset, I'd like to express our collective gratitude to Canada's Indigenous people and acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississauga of Credit River. Today, this meeting place continues to be the home to many Indigenous people across territorial lands, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to teach, to do research, to work and prosper in their ancestral homeland. I would be honored to welcome Dr. Borhan to the University of Toronto and our lecture series. Dr. Borhan is a course lecturer in Persian language at McGill University's Institute of Islamic Studies. He earned his first PhD in Persian language and literature from the University of Tehran in 2020, where he also served as a visiting professor in Persian literature. He has previously served as a visiting scholar in the Department of Religious Study at Yale University from 2017 to 2019, and he's currently pursuing a second PhD at McGill University. His interdisciplinary research focuses on Persian and Arabic mystical literature and Sufism, particularly emphasizing the concept of karamat, miracle. His forthcoming book, Among Our Sheikh's Karamat, explores this theme within the broader context of Persian mystical traditions. In addition to his academic pursuit, Dr. Borhan has a long-lasting connection to Persian traditional music, having practiced both vocal and instrumental forms. He's also the author of annotated edition of Rumi's Masnavi's Latayef al-Ma'navi in 2017, which was awarded the Best Student Book of the Year in Iran. Dr. Borhan's research has been published in respected journals such as Iranian Studies, the British Journal of Middle Eastern Studies, and Adab Farsi. My friend and colleague, Professor Pune Shabani Jadidi, will moderate today's session on lyrical language learning, a multisensory approach to teaching Persian language through literature and music. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Borhan to our lecture series. Dr. Borhan.
Thank you so much, Ustad Talagani, and I want to thank Ustad Shabani Jadidi and also Ustad Tawakkoli Targhi که جاشون خالیه for this brilliant series of talk. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which should be optimized for video sharing and sound. You see it now? And you don't see the timer this time. Good. So I'm going to start with acknowledging that McGill University is on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse indigenous people whose presence marks this territory on which people on this world now gathered, including Harir. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what research tells us about music and language learning. And I promise it won't take too long, but it set the stage for everything I'm going to explore later in the talk. So an extensive body of research supports the integration of music into language classrooms as an effective pedagogical tool. Studies across different languages and contexts consistently highlight music's role in enhancing language acquisition, improving retention, fostering motivation, and reducing learning anxiety. The majority of research in English-speaking countries has focused on teaching French, mostly, and Spanish, while in many other regions, studies predominantly explore English language acquisition. So one of the earliest discussions on using songs in foreign language classrooms is this study by Bartel in 1962, which explores how music enhances the atmosphere and enjoyment of learning. And like between this huge body of scholarship, I tried to choose a diverse range of studies and not all of them probably. On the same journal, a few years later, Reeve investigates the role of popular songs in engaging student and reinforcing grammatical structure. Also, Judice provides practical methods for integrating music into language classrooms for benefits of vocabulary acquisitions and comprehension. There are lots of studies about cultural, like the benefits of music and songs for cultural immersion. One that I liked was this study by Suleiman, which focuses on teaching Arabic language through songs. And he argues that because of the rich culture content of the Arabic songs, they can be successfully utilized to place the target language in its cultural context. He also added an appendix containing 7 songs drawn from the standard and dialectical form of the Arabic language. A similar study, which was a PhD dissertation at University of Texas Austin in 2008, has been done on teaching Russian languages and culture through the music of Vladimir Vysotsky. Kumar and others use music and songs as pedagogical tools in teaching English in as a foreign language, where English is not the native language. And Wishnevskaya did a similar job and explored the impact of using music and songs on teaching English in China by non-native English speakers, and how it aids in memorizing new language patterns, facilitate the assimilation of the English grammar, and provide relaxation after complex topics. Yasa Alizadeh also, in the Routledge Handbook of Second Language Acquisition, edited by Ustad Shabani Jadidi, discusses the effectiveness of teaching by songs, and she used Khune Ma Dure by Marjan Farsad as an example, and how it brings culture to the classroom and helps create empathy between the foreign learner and the Iranian singer who herself was first-generation immigrant in the States. There are some, lots of actually, experimental studies as well on music in language learning. Reg in 2009 tested 2 groups of students learning a French poem with and without music, and the results showed that the music group performed much better than the non-music group in vocabulary and verb recall and grammatical structures. A Persian version of this study has been done at Ferdowsi University of Mashhad, where Ghazanfari Muqaddam and Ustad Muhammad Ja'far Yahaqi investigates the effect of melodic component of the literary text, and the case study was Shahnameh. They didn't use the song itself, but they used the internal and external music of the poem itself. What they did was that they divided a classroom of 50 students into two groups. One using the original poem of Ferdowsi, the original poem, and one the prose rendition of it. And the results showed that the original poem, which like the songs of the poem was involved, showed significantly better comprehension of the vocabulary and even the story of the poem. Sadiqzadeh also did some research on neurological research that showed that rhythm and melody enhances the language retention by engaging multiple brain regions involved in cognition, and student can recall the vocabulary and grammar structures much better with music, like using music. But these studies collectively demonstrate that the music is not merely an aid to language learning, but a powerful cognitive and emotional tool. From fostering vocabulary retention to easing pronunciation and enhancing engagement, music brings together the emotional, cultural, and structural elements of language in ways that conventional methods often cannot. But these are benefits of incorporating music into language learning, and language here translates to a modern spoken language. However, Persian stands apart for its deep and enduring tradition of setting even classical poetry to music, a practice that has shaped its cultural and artistic identity for over a millennium. Unlike many other languages where classical poetry and music have historically remained as separate arts, Persian has cultivated a unique literary musical tradition in which classical poetry and modern poetry has been continuously adopted into songs, maintaining its relevance and accessibility across generations. The strong bond between these two, music and literature, can be better understood considering many poet musicians during the history of poetry and music in the Persianate world. From pre-Islamic time, poetry was combined with music. The Ghossan, poet-musician minstrels, were a central tradition, probably originating in the earlier Achaemenid period. In the Middle Persian, terms for minstrels was khonyagar and later referred to as navagar or rameshgar. Take the example of Bārbad, who was an early 7th century chief minstrel, poet, musician of Sassanian court under Khosrow Parviz, who was responsible for conveying important messages to the king, and he was doing so by improvising words and melodies suited to the occasion. You can see Bārbad at the bottom right and Khosrow Parviz at the center, and no mustache intended here. It was just like an illustration. Most of the early Persian poets also acted as minstrels. The eminent poet Rūdakī at the Samanid court and Farrukhi Sistani at the Ghaznavid court were both accomplished musicians. Also take the example of our beloved Ḥāfiẓ, which according to Dr. Shafieh Katkani and others, contrary to popular belief, Ḥāfiẓ likely adopted his pen name, not because of his memorization of the Quran, but due to his reputation as musician and a skilled singer, and the title originally tied to his artistry, and later he picked it for his poetic takhallus pen name. غزل سرای ناهید صرفه‌ای نبرد در آن مقام که حافظ برآورد آواز. The ghazal singing of Venus would not take the lead in the place where Hafiz sings. اور ز چنگ زهره شنیدم که صبحدم میگفت غلام حافظ خوش لهجه خوش آوازم. From the harp of Venus I have heard that at dawn it said, I'm pupil of Hafiz, eloquent in word and melodious in sing. Connection between poetry and music exists in other languages as well. For instance, in Arabic music and literature, poetic forms like muwashshaha and the Lusian tradition and malhoun, Moroccan song poetry, integrates literature and music. Arabic maqam theory dictates the tonal and rhythmic patterns used in vocal compositions. In the German Lied tradition, composers like Schubert and Schumann set poetry to classical musics. Similarly, in the French La Mélodie tradition, which is a form of French art song arising in the mid-19th century, songs were composed based on the classical poetry. However, in both cases, the later ones, these compositions are mostly from the 18th and 19th century, with only rare instances of musical adaptation from the Renaissance and before that. Yet, what distinguishes Persian is its sheer continuity, breadth, and cultural centrality, even among the young generation in modern times. From the earliest surviving New Persian poems of Rūdakī from 9th century to the mystical verses of Rumi, Ḥāfiẓ, Khayyam, and even modern Persian literature like Furukh, Simin Behbahani, Nima, Persian poetry continues to thrive through musical adaptations. It spans a wide spectrum of musical styles, from traditional Persian dastgah and tasnif to contemporary genres like rock, jazz, and even rap. Let me play a song performed by Marzian Banan, set to a poem by Rūdakī, often regarded as the father of Persian poetry. Rūdakī was the first major poet to compose in Persian literature, in New Persian. Now let me share something a little bit more personal, my mother's voice.
بوی جوی مولیان آید همی یاد یار مهربان آید همی ریگ آموی و درشتی های او زیر پایم پرنیان آید همی.
So first of all که بمیرم برای صداش. But second, I asked my mother, Mahnaz Jun, what is جوی مولیان here? مامان جان چه بدونم چه میدونم. My mother replied, how can I know? I said, okay. What about ریگ آموی that you sang like so beautifully? She said, that's a kind of pebble, that's a kind of rig, perhaps, I don't know. I didn't even bother to ask what is kheng in the next line, which historically was like a certain breed of white horse, but in modern Persian is stupid. But my mother knew the entire poem, and she sings it effortlessly. But surprisingly, she knew the poem was for Rūdakī, but didn't know the words that she's singing. And my mother is an educated maman, لیسانس شیمی زمان شاه, but she didn't know the words there, but she knew the poem by heart. Without this song by Marzian Banan, my mother, like many others probably, would likely have never known this poem, or at least would not have memorized it by heart. She sings it effortlessly without needing to understand every word. This is the power of music in teaching literature. It imprints language, rhythm, and the meaning in ways that the conventional learning often cannot. If a poem from over 1,000 years ago can be preserved in memory through melody, why not use this as a tool for teaching literature? This uninterrupted fusion of literature and music offers an exceptional opportunity for Persian language and literature pedagogy. With such a vast repository for classical poetry available in musical forms, instructors can use these compositions to enhance linguistic proficiency, improve phonetic awareness, and engage students emotionally with the language. Just as immersion in a language-rich environment accelerates language acquisition, music offers a parallel contextual experience for engaging with literature. Specifically, in the case of Persian, that traveling to Persian-speaking countries like Iran and Afghanistan is not very accessible, just compared to Turkish or Arabic language. This is even more important then. And then this approach benefits the language itself. Literary words and phrases, which are used and repeated in the songs, stick in the mind even unconsciously and can be recalled in the context and be used in speaking. One crucial point to highlight is that Persian, by its very essence, was traditionally taught as a classical language up until early or mid 20th century, when modern pedagogical approaches began shifting toward spoken and communicative methods. I owe this discussion to Ustad Samei, who is here, who raised this point at the last Iranian Studies Conference in Mexico City. I had the privilege of speaking with him for hours, gaining invaluable insight on this historical transition. Before this shift, Persian instruction, particularly for non-native speakers across the Persianate world, was deeply rooted in literary text, poetry, and historical prose, reinforcing its status as a language of high culture and intellectual discourse. Historically, Persian, like Arabic, has been taught through poetry and musical recitation. This is evident in the self-instructional text, Khodamuz, that's used for pedagogical tool. One remarkable example that you can see in the slides is Nisab al-Sabyan, meaning the minimum knowledge for children, written in 1220 by Abu Nasr Farahi. This 200-verse Arabic-Persian book was designed to introduce words in Arabic, linguistic concepts, and prosody, aruz, while embedding broader knowledge, such as the names of Arabic, Persian, and Roman month, the prophets' wives and children, and the 12 Imam. All in poetic form. It functioned much like the rhythmic thing that my generation learned in a school, like Awal Imam Ali, Dovom Imam Hassan, Yazam Askari, but probably in much more sophisticated way. For the purpose of this talk, however, what is often overlooked is the role of music in teaching these texts. Internal evidence suggests that it was not merely read, but likely recited and accompanied by music. Look at the text here. چو دل به پرده عشاق برکشد آهنگ به بحر مجتث, which is one of the بحور in عروض, برخوان غزل به نغمه چنگ مفاعل فعلات مفاعل فعلات بگوی تا شودت علم و دانش و فرهنگ, and then the meaning of the Arabic word سؤال, سرفه, سرعت, شتاب, لبس, درنگ, قصیر, کوته, واسع, فراخ, ضیق, تنگ. In the other example, the image at the middle, it starts with زهی به پای تو خوبان نهاده روی نیاز قد چو سرو تو عشاق راست عمر دراز مفاعل فعلات مفاعل فعلات بگوی مجتث خوشخوان تو در مقام حجاز. This مقام حجاز is historically one of the important maqams in Persian and Arabic literature. Or the other one, مفاعل فعلات مفاعل فعلان خوش است صوت به مجتث به ناله بمزیر, and this ناله بمزیر is again an indication that it was not only read but also accompanied by music. This suggests that the tradition of using music as an educational tool has been embedded in Persian literature pedagogy for centuries to enhance memorization, reinforce linguistic patterns, and make learning more engaging. The very fact that Shahnameh has historically been taught through Naqqali, a performative storytelling tradition that relies on intonation, rhythm, and musicality, highlights how literature and oral music were inseparable in Persian literature pedagogy. But at the same time, it is not just the music that works as a tool for teaching Persian language and literature, but as a matter of fact, Persian classical music also integrates poetry as its core pedagogy. In the dastgah system of Iranian music, many gushe, which are the subsections within the dastgah, are directly associated with specific poetic themes. In Radif, the classical Persian repertoire, some of the most well-known gushe, such as Layli و Majnun, Khosrow و Shirin, and even Masnavi, which exist in all the radifs of the Persian music, are named after and intertwined with Persian poetic narratives. This was Gushe Layli و Majnun by Ustad Shajarian, which particularly this song is traditionally used with this poem for centuries, and the poem is by Nizami Ganjavi. And this is the case for many other Gushe. I put them on each other and then I cannot find the next page. You can go, Halas Shadi, and then here is 11. All right. I forgot to bring this beautiful calligraphy up on the same point. I now turn to practical strategies for integrating music into Persian literature pedagogy and Persian language pedagogy. While music naturally enhances engagement, research suggests that simply singing along to a song without structure or intent does little for learning retention. To be effective, musical activities in the classroom must be goal-oriented and task-based, providing students with both linguistic and literary insights. One structured approach is to divide song-based lessons into pre-listening and post-listening activities, ensuring students engage with both the content and the cultural context. For the pre-listening activities, you can first choose the before exposing students to a song, it's essential to activate the background knowledge and provide context. Otherwise, what they receive may be nothing more than an acoustic blur. You can choose the right song. Not every song is pedagogically effective. To maximize learning outcome, consider the following: the content-related songs. Select the songs that align with the curriculum's goal. For example, when I teach a lesson on immigration, I usually choose به کجا چنین شتابان by شفیع کدکنی, or من اینجا ریشه در خاکم, I'm rooted in soil here by فریدون مشیری, and songs on these two poems. Think about distinctiveness. A good voice and composition are not enough. The song should have something unique and engaging. And then the repetition and the structure matters a lot, like clear rhyme and memorable rhythm matters. And then the pace. If the song is too fast or just too slow, it doesn't really help. And then provide some context. Offer fun facts about the poet and the singer. If you have personal stories with a certain song, with a certain poem, or with a certain poet, share it with the students. For example, when I teach this به کجا چنین شتابان by Marza Shafi, Ustad Shafi Katkani, I usually say that he was my professor at Tehran University. He grades so bad. And when I use the song that like my vocal masters sang it, I just use it, show some pictures. It just works as to increasing the engagement of the student with the song and providing more context. And introduce key terms with a question. When teaching Baba Tahir, I usually start by asking students what the word Orion means, Baba Tahir Orion. And then they say like Baba Tahir was naked. And then it just like creates, like I go around the myth around the poet to come up with some engaging discussions about and setting the stage to speaking about the poet and the poem and the song. Imagine you're teaching Khayyam. First of all, don't let Khayyam go with all these diverse and beautiful material on him. You can start sparking interest about Khayyam literary history. If students already know Khayyam, what I do is by sharing the bad news. Much of what they associate with him, especially the famous English translations and the famous ones that they know by heart, may not actually be his work, but rather poems written in the Khayyamian style, Khayyamane. If students don't know him yet, I save this revelation for the end of the class. Then share the Khayyam's philosophy in seizing the moment and life is too short. If it's a graduate class, you can share like divine appreciation Khayyam has always. And then speaking about the like translations of Khayyam, the Fitzgerald, these are all setting the stage to preparing the class for the Rubaiyat of him. And then introduce Rubai, the structure of the Rubai and the brevity and the impact that unlike ghazals and epic verses, Rubai delivers like a sharp, reflective, and philosophical thought in just 2 lines. And once they grasp the Rubai form, a student can appreciate why it has been so easily set to music for centuries. And voila, that's the time for music after these 2 stages, huh? There are tons of music on Khayyam in different genres, in the classical Persian music, in jazz, in rap, in rock, and even like in Hollywood, you can find the traces in series, in Big Bang Theory, like there's Khayyam. You can use all of these resources to set the stage for introducing Khayyam. I sometimes try to come up with something. This is a song by Kamkars, like Kamkarha, a Kurdish group in Iran. This repetition matters in the song. If you take another song, I can tell you should you don't only teach Khayyam with this poem and with this 2 music videos. And by the way, I prefer to use video clips, which works much better than the songs because of the cultural elements exist in it. But you teach the entire culture around like Bushehri, why Khayyam from northeastern part of Iran, from 1,000 years ago find its way to Bushehr, like southern Iran, in this particular way of music. And then in Kurdish side, it is the same story. And I chose this particular Rūdakī here because it happened to be one of the authentic poems of Khayyam, Rubaiyat of Khayyam, based on the latest edition of Ustad Mir-Djalali. But also it is so easy. You can easily use this poem and these two songs for your elementary courses. There's no word in it, but there are lots of like play with kuze in these two lines that you can easily use for teaching many grammatical structures. But after this, for applying music to teaching, we have post-listening activities. Once students have listened to the song, the next step is to reinforce active learning through structured exercises. Rather than passively absorbing the music, students should engage with the lyric, vocabulary, and poetic structure. This process not only enhances language retention, but also strengthens their connection to the poem. You can first play the song and simply ask a student to listen and absorb the melody and the lyrics. On the second listen, they have them try to write down the poem as they hear it. Persian classical music is usually slow, almost half the pace of the Persian spoken. It gives them enough room for picking up vocabulary, grammatical structures, and pronunciation. Accept mistakes and gaps, but it is the key. Students remember the word they struggle with far better than those they see written from the start. And songs songs they are usually 4, 5, 6 minutes. You can ask them to listen to it a few times, and you can assign it as a homework for home and assign these activities on the song, which I usually do. And after the initial transcriptions, provide the correct poem and have students compare their version to the original and ask them to identify and correct their own mistakes, guiding them through any difficult sections. And for the vocabulary part, select keywords from the songs on familiar terms, key poetic character, and introduce each word in the different contexts using simple example sentences where words function similarly in meaning and connotation. You can also assign fill in the blanks exercises, provide students with a poem, but remove keywords such as adjectives, rhyming words, and thematic phrases, and have students listen and fill in the blanks as they hear the song. And then for the final part, use the poem to highlight specific literary devices such as rhyme, alliteration, metaphor, and repetition. If focusing on grammar, use the poem to teach adjective, verb structures, or sentences pattern. Just as the case of Khayyam, which I used one poem with two different versions of the songs. This is one of the unique characteristics of the Persian music and literature. And especially compared to pop and popular songs, is that like the variety of compositions that exist for a single poem. Unlike most popular songs, where lyrics are tied to a single musical arrangement, like Khanum Gol is always Khanum Gol, Behet Gol Midam Sakhnis is always the same. But Persian poetry has been interpreted through multiple musical styles, ranging from traditional to jazz, rock, and rap. If multiple musical versions of a poem exist, introduce them all. Encourage students to explore different renditions of their own and use comparative listening exercises to deepen their engagement with the poem. Here are a few ways to use this activity. By listening to multiple versions, first of all, one of the first benefits and one of the most important ones is that students shift their focus from the song itself to the poem, deepening their engagement with the text, and personalizing the experience by choosing a favorite version or favorite lines help them to make bond with the poem. You can ask them to compare these two. Play two or more versions of the same poem, one in classical, for example, and another in modern arrangement, and ask a student which version resonates with them more and why. And you can and in some versions of the music, some musical adaptations omit or rearrange the lines of a poem. Ask students which lines do they hear in one version, but not in the other one, and have them choose their favorite lines and reflect on their meaning. And by doing so, learners become personally invested in the process of language learning and can own the language they are learning. Look at these different compositions on one poem of Ḥāfiẓ. پیشم مدام است از لعل دلخواه کارم به کام است الحمدلله ای بخت سرکش تنگش ببرکش گه جام زرکش گه لعل دلخواه. Look how slow it was. And then you can use another one by Bijan Kamkar, which is a little bit more engaging. Or if you want a little bit more active. These three songs are based not only on the just one poem, one ghazal of Ḥāfiẓ, but on two, which because of the same meter and same rhyme, they just picked different lines from these two. One is Aisham Modamas, the other one was what? I forgot it. Whatever. But the two are almost the same. That's why the composers chose different lines from different two poems and put them together. But this allows a student to experience the same poem in different artistic expressions, deepening both linguistic engagement and literary appreciation. These two songs on the same ghazal of Maulana by the same singers, Shajarian, Pedar va Pesar, father and son. This is the older one. The same poem, the same singer, the son, a few years later, probably without the presence of the Ustad Shajarian. But so far, we have focused on the canonical poets like Khayyam, Ḥāfiẓ, Maulana. But if you look for an effective way to teach Persian proverbs, Darbul Masal, why not combining it with the classical poetry, with ghazals of Sa'di, for example, this one. سخن عشق تو بی آنکه بر
بازگویم که بنالم ز پریشانی عالم بازگویم که عیان است که حاجت به بیانم که حاجت به بیانم.
Both second misra of both lines are proverbs. This like slow pace of saying it and in musical form helps you then easily memorize the proverb. رنگ رخسار خبر میدهد از سر درون and the other one بازگویم عیان است چه حاجت به بیان است which is آن چیز که عیان است چه حاجت به بیان است. Okay. Persian language, like Iranian languages, dialects, and accents. One crucial yet often overlooked aspect of Persian language teaching is the diversity of its dialects and accents. And I personally love accents. That's probably why I kept my beautiful Persian accent. But Persian is not restricted to Tehrani accent, aka the modern Me'yar standard Farsi Persian. It exists in multiple regional forms, each carrying its own historical, cultural, and musical identity. I try to acknowledge English accent in Persian speaking in the classroom, and especially in the classrooms that there are lots of heritage students that they have English accent as a kind of accent, which is as beautiful as Esfahani accent, as beautiful as Yazdi, Khorasani, Gilaki, Mazani, Kurdi, Lori accent. This is also another kind of accent that I try to acknowledge. And for that purpose, I try to associate some classical Persian poetry which has been sung by singers in exile or singers who grew up not in the countries where native language was Persian. Ra'na Farhan is one example.
سرمست شد نگارم بنگر به نرگسانش مستانه شد حدیثش پیچیده شد زبانش.
But also the beautiful accent and the dialects exist in Tajikistan and Afghanistan. I recently found about this beautiful concert Neyname on Maulana's poetry, in which three singers, two Iranian, one Tajik, sing the same poet with different ways of singing. And in the concert, which was at UNESCO Hall, you can see the same lines, once with Tajiki accent, one by Sara Naini with Persian accent in another form of music. But regional Persian poetry and dialects should also find their way into the classroom. One of the best ways to introduce dialectal variation in Persian is through folk poetry, and Baba Tahir from 11th century is an ideal figure for this purpose. You can teach Dobaiti as a form, quatrain, folk poetry, dialects, accents, and much more all in one. You want to make it even more engaging, combine it with another folk music, flamenco, a musical genre with strong oral tradition, improvisation, and dialectal richness, much like Persian regional traditions. you can see the accent, the variation of the words like mo, nagashtom, all involved, and you can elaborate on this in the classroom with so many other examples. The other one is like besides canonical figures, if you want to teach aruz, which let's like face it, it's so difficult for students to grasp through theory alone. One of the most powerful aspects of Persian classical music is that it is like its composition often follow the metric pattern of Persian poetry. The internal rhyme and rhythmic flow in a well-composed song provide a natural and intuitive way for students to hear, feel, and internalize poetic meter. نه این که هیچ برو اینجا.
دلان از دل کسی بنشین که او از دل خبر دارد به زیر آن درختی رو که او گلهای تر دارد.
Or the other one.
من از کجا پند از کجا باده بگردم سالیا من از کجا پند از کجا باده
Of time, I'm sorry, Ustad Shajarian. And then finally, the post listening reflection. Just pause and think. Of course, this process will differ from class to class, from level to level. Most of what I've discussed here was for upper, intermediate, and advanced, but you can tailor it for introductory with simpler poems and easier tasks. But after a few sessions, it's worth revisiting what worked and what was challenging. Was the song too fast? Was the vocabulary overwhelming? Did the rhythm help or confuse them? Noting these observations allows both teachers and students to refine the method over time. And Persian musical literary pedagogy isn't just about Rumi, Ḥāfiẓ, Khayyam. I didn't go into modern Persian poetry for the sake of time, but if you wish, there is an entire universe of compositions on poets like Forough Farrokhzad, Nima, Yushij Ahmad Shamlu, Simin Behbahani. The idea isn't to limit ourselves to canonical, but to expand Persian pedagogy into its full literary musical richness. And for the resources, Spotify recently added the lyrics, so most of the songs available on Spotify and iMusic come with the lyrics. For purchasing songs, you can use BigTunes, which is the Iranian version of iTunes. Golha.co.uk, the super rich resource by Jane Aziz. Ganjur has recently has been changed dramatically in a sense that it added recitation of the poetry. It added some like references to the actual text, actual edition of the Khayyam or Ḥāfiẓ from different variation, also to even the manuscripts, different manuscripts of Ḥāfiẓ or Sa'di. Also, it has like a referral link to the songs composed based on certain poems. You can use all these sources and much more, like probably on YouTube. And به قول مولانا این همه گفتیم لیکن در بسیج بی عنایت شما هیچیم هیچ. Throughout this talk, I used a lot of I do this, I do that, I did that. But I'm coming from a culture and I'm teaching actually a culture in which humility and modesty is the key. So all these slides, all I have discussed was just some humble suggestions based on my modest, relatively short compared to ustads that are here, experience of teaching Persian. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, and thank you.
Wow. It was amazing, very rich. I learned a lot. I'm sure that it was fun and entertaining, and it was very, very rich and informative. So thank you so much, Behzad. Like usual, I will start with saying the main points that Behzad mentioned, the ones that I remembered and took a note, and then I will open the floor for questions. So Behzad started with a discussion on the early pedagogical consideration. He said about the benefits of integration of music in language acquisition. He mentioned some theories in European languages as well as in Persian. Some of those benefits he mentioned were engaging students, vocabulary acquisition and recall, cultural immersion, reducing anxiety, pattern memorization. Then one of my favorite parts of it was, of course, experimental studies and neurolinguistic studies on music and language learning. And he mentioned one study that I have to go and read because I haven't yet, by Muqaddam and Elahé, and the importance of internal and external melody of the poems in the Shahnameh. That was what their study was about. And then he mentioned about Persian's unique literary music case because it dates back to 1,000 years ago. He mentioned poets, musicians, and minstrels. He mentioned Gusan of the Parthian era, Bārbad of the Sassanian era. And then he also mentioned, he named some of the poets who were also musicians like Rūdakī, Farrukhī Sistani, and Ḥāfiẓ. He also mentioned in other languages like Arabic, German, and French, and how Persian is exceptional because of its use of it in today's music, pop, rock, etc. And he told us about music poetry approach to teaching Persian and how crucial it is, as the students cannot go to two of the Persian-speaking countries, Iran and Afghanistan. Persian, he said, that was taught up until mid-20th century in traditional method, using literary and historical prose and poetry texts. But of course, it's changing now. And because he's a musician himself, he walked us through the dastgah that is shared between Persian music and Persian literary pedagogy. And he mentioned like Layli و Majnun, dastgah of Layli و Majnun, Khosrow Shirin, Masnavi. Oh, it was so rich. I mean, there are so many things to talk about. And then he mentioned applying music to teaching Persian literature and language. And he mentioned that according to the research that he has done, just listening to songs does not help. We have to tell our students not only the content, but also the context, that is the background knowledge that must be emphasized. And he gave us some pre-listening activity suggestions to set the stage. Then he gave us post-listening activities to deepen engagement with a poem, such as transcription, key vocabularies, fill in the blanks, analyzing poetic and linguistic features, and making the poem personal to the students. He mentions you can also teach proverbs through music and like Sadi's poetry that is sung by traditional musicians. And he also mentioned Iranian languages, inclusion of Iranian languages, dialects, and accents through music, even the Western European accents in Persian. And he also mentioned introducing poetic meter through music and how it will simplify it for learners. He finished his talk by a post-listening reflection and invited us to ask our students for reflection and then tailor the music for the level of the students. One thing that you mentioned, maybe I can also confirm that I do the same and I see the fruits of it. So I also do the same as you. So the first 10 minutes of the class is always allocated to a poem. So the performance of it, I usually try to choose the ones with subtitles. I start with the English subtitle one and then to the Persian subtitles. And it really attracts students. And I also use songs that are both in sang by Afghanistani singers, as well as Tajikistani and the Iranian ones. So this is amazing. I have a lot of questions, but I think I better stop and let others to take advantage. So you may raise your hand and I can ask you to ask your questions yourselves. If not, I can ask some of my questions. Oh, okay. Yasser, you may ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Borhan, many thanks for your fantastic and engaging talk. I don't have any questions, actually. I have a brief note regarding Hafez pen name. Ustad Bastani Parizi was the first to mention Hafez pen name as a singer and musician in a famous article titled Hafez Chandin Honar, not Professor Shafiq Katkani. I just wanted to mention this.
Thank you so much. I try to be inclusive and say Dr. Shafiq Katkani and others. Probably that and others would answer this concern. But thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I'm going to ask. Oh, okay. There is a question. Adela?
Thank you so much, Borhan. It was an amazing and very, very rich presentation. You made me miss Iran more. I really miss Iran now. I had 3 questions, but they are related to each other. So one of the first question is usually how many students are in your classroom? And what is their major, and also about their feedback. What is their feedback after this classes? Because for me, I think it's very, very entertaining and engaging.
Thank you for your wonderful question. It's important and nice seeing you, Adela Jan. For how many students this year, perhaps Taranejan, Ustad Sani, who is here present, we are fortunate to have in upper intermediate that I'm teaching this year, it's 13 students, but we are fortunate because they are all heritage students who are already into the culture. So I have all the liberty to bring as much as music and poetry as I can. And for the feedback, I and like in previous years, as little as 4 students also happened in McGill Institute of Islamic Studies. For the feedback, I try to do it like constantly, even like after the class and like after a few sessions. It's like usually in the like questions like which one you like more, why you, and like for example for Khayyam and Baba Tahir, some said that I love this like the dialectical version of it. I can like learn now. I can remember why my mom, like grandmom, say more nemitunam more, and then they just used to use it. It very much depends on the class you're teaching. The feedbacks come from like the level, the students of that certain class. I can't put it into like one general, but it really matters. You can just change it as much as you can.
Taranejan?
Thank you, Behzad. Such a wonderful talk, and like we expect no less from you, of course. I mean, you did talk about this a little bit, but I just want to see with the music videos and like the visual elements that can be added to this whole experience. Besides like the cultural elements or the colors or the instruments, for example, what else have you seen? For example, I'm thinking about like things written in Nastali, or just like some music videos that have lyrics on them, maybe like coming in with the rhythm, or, you know, like what I mean, like appearing and disappearing, something like that, because it is multisensory approach that we're talking about. And like, have you seen anything else in that area that's not just just music video and like people playing, but something that can be used in the linguistic way of teaching the students.
John, that's a beautiful point. I didn't think about it in that way, in like linguistic, from linguistic point of view. But like the other things that come with these songs, for example, in Khayyami tradition in Bushehr, Khayyam Khani Bushehri, all those like this, like it was for a student who reminded me of like the correlation between this and probably Hispanic way of improvising and everything. It comes with the entire culture in it, not just like women singing in the gathering nowadays in Bushehr, which is a little bit new to students, and also showing the instruments. Many of them ask about the instrument. What was that? Like kamanche, how do they play it, and tar and everything. What about the fact that you pointed out about lyrics coming up, like pops up in the video? I haven't heard anything, but that's probably one of the engaging part of the short video clips or reels on Instagram or on Facebook that probably works, like does the job without even we think about it.
Thank you. There's a question by Someira Zahra. So she's thanking you, and then she says, understanding a poem is often more complicated than understanding a prose text. Do you have a method for that? Do the students understand poems at the end of the training?
They do understand the poem at the end of the training. And what I usually do is to not be focused on the entire ghazal, like 10 baits sometimes, just like a few lines. The goal is to immerse them in the culture and in the literature. So it doesn't really need to, and I'm speaking at the moment about just like teaching Persian literature in language classes. If you want to teach only Persian literature class, that's completely another story. So the goal here is to immerse themselves. And about the first question about prose text, I didn't get the question probably completely. Do you ask? Is it?
No, she's asking if you have a method for teaching poetry as opposed to a prose, because poem is more complicated.
Probably the entire talk was about teaching poetry as opposed to prose. But even for the prose, if I want to add, you can use many multisensory approaches for teaching prose. There are many of the like this audiobooks, or there are some, like for example for Tarikh Bayhaqi, which is a difficult text, like that is the like bedtime story that I sometimes play myself. That there are like beautiful voices, one that Dr. Yahaqin Ferdowsi Mashhad published as Dibay Zarbaft, which reads the entire Tarikh Bayhaqi and with all this like sensory musical background, and it helps a lot.
Thank you. Abolfaz John.
As always, it's wonderful to listen to you, Behzad Jan. Great and inspiring, really, because I taught Persian literature, and now I really, kind of disappointed that haven't taught your method in some of the classes, especially with Rumi and in some of the more lyrical kind of poetry. My question was rather wanted to know. Your approach to teaching this has a different resonance with heritage students versus non-heritage students. Heritage students are often, in their homes, they listen to Shajarian, they listen to even more pop musics that use Persian classical literature, as opposed to non-heritage students, which this is completely new to them. And whether their reaction and their grasp of the subject matter would be different, and how would you tweak your teaching that they are on the same plane level, basically? Thank you.
Abolfaz Jan, that's a wonderful point, actually. But again, in terms of heritage students, it differs from class to class. Some of them are like completely, they already know a lot of like verses by heart. So what I do, just to refer to the structure that I try to offer in this presentation, that is the pre-listening part becomes less important, because they already know who is Khayyam. They already know who is how. They just want to know more about it. So I have more liberty in teaching the literature to the heritage students who already know a lot about the culture or but in the case of the non-native speakers or non-heritage students, I do the pre-listening part much more in depth and try to like offer some other elements as well in the classroom to just set the stage and prepare them to get into the poem, for which I try to use music as an like instructional helping method for that. And then for post listening, again, depends on the level of the class. You can use a lot of difficult post listening methods, probably like in a way that you would do in the literature class as you like taught and like are teaching literature. But in the case of non-heritage students, that would be a little bit more focused on the poem, like listening activities to just get the sense of the poem only by listening. That would be probably one way, but I look forward to hear more about you, how you will take this.
Leila has a question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Borhan, for such a fascinating talk, and I really enjoyed it. I don't have a literature background, but I do have a question. Given the fact that mother and child relation is very unique, I wanted to know, do you think that we can use lullabies combined with the music in the class?
Oh, in the class. I'm afraid they go to sleep, but that would be a wonderful way to do it. I didn't think about it, but whatever that brings culture, which is such an important point in like culture, we have variety of lullabies in like different regions, Gilaki, Kurd, Lor. That would be a brilliant thing. One point about that just came to my mind is that the language of the lullaby is sometimes not really like clear, and it's often in the native Lori or Kurdi or like language, which doesn't help for this purpose we are discussing, the like بحث ما نحن فيه, in a way that it is not even Persian. But for introducing culture, that would be a beautiful way to doing it.
There's a book by Sima Bina on Iran.
Yeah.
Okay, Sima Jan, you had a question? Yes, Sima Jan.
Not Bina
بله
Jan.
من هندریز رو نتونستم پیدا کنم اینو و
sound is now like music, Sima Jan. It has like a beautiful echo. As I can hear.
من سلام عرض میکنم خدمت همه دوستان عزیز، همکاران گرامی و با تشکر از شما آقای برهان به خاطر صحبت خیلی مفرح و آموزندتون، جالب بود و هم درد و دلای ما رو هم تازه کردین، چون حتما همه دوستانی تجربه رو دارن، کسایی که درگیر آموزش فارسی هستن. در واقع مثل یه آکروبات همه کاری میکنیم که بتونیم این زبان رو به هر متریالی که داریم یه ذره از این یه ذره از اون درس بدیم. و در مورد تدریس از طریق ادبیات من فقط میخواستم اون تجربه خودم رو یکی دو تاشو مطرح کنم و ببینم که شما دوستان هم همین تجربه رو داشتیم و یه در واقع برین استورمینگ بکنیم اینجا. یکی از اولین در واقع کالچرال شاک یا شوک فرهنگی که اینجا شدم من تو هلند زندگی میکنم و درس میدم، این بود که خب من تو سطح بالاتر از لیسانس و فوق لیسانس، حتی دکترا و پستدوک، و همونجور که میدونین کلاس ها مخلوط هستن، یعنی دانشجوها با انگیزهای مختلف، بک‌گراندهای مختلف میان یاد میگیرن. یونیفاید نیست، یک دست نیست که ما بتونیم یک چیز مشخص رو مطرح کنیم و این واقعا مجبور میشیم که اکلکتیک برخورد کنیم. ولی یادمه که تو مثلا کلاس اول فارسی که یه آدمای تحصیل کرده فوق لیسانس، من سعی کردم که یک جمله خیلی آسون رو به نظر خودم یک قطعه کوچیک رو نوشته بودم که مثلا فقط فعل گذشته داشته باشه یا هر چیزی، یا نه فعل to be اگه اشتباه نکنم. بعد یکی از این جمله این بود که کتاب دوست خوبی است و من فکر میکردم خب این خیلی جمله ساده ایه. بعد دیدم اون نگاه پرسشگر رو توی چشای دانشجوها دیدم و نمیفهمیدم. گفتم مشکلتون چی؟ گفتن ما نمیفهمیم. گفتم خب کجاشو نمیفهمین؟ کتاب دوست خوب، یعنی ترکیب اضافی است، این چی کجاش مشکل؟ گفتن کلمه‌هاش مشکل نیست، ولی خب این یعنی چی؟ و این واقعا مثل پتک تو سر من خورد که نوع برداشتی رابطه‌ای که ما با کلمات و مفاهیم داریم واقعا فرق میکنه و اینو حالا خیلی بزرگترش کنین در مورد شعر. ما با شعر بزرگ میشیم و اینقدر این تو زندگی عادیمون جاریه که متوجه نمیشیم چقدر درکش مشکله. یعنی حتی خیلی چیزای ساده مثلا مثل رباعیای خیام structurally از نظر ساختاری، از نظر حتی واژه ها ساده هم، ولی اون لایه های معنایی و اون کانوتیشن هایی که اینا دارن لزوما قابل ادراک نیست حتی با خیلی آدم های sophisticated، به خاطر اینکه universe of discourseشون فرق میکنه و من فکر میکنم این چیزیه که ما باید مد نظر داشته باشیم و مثل همیشه من این نکته رو تاکید میکنم که فکر میکنم در تدریس و تدوین متریال برای آموزش فارسی ما باید همیشه حواسمون به این باشه که مخاطبمون کیه و نمیتونیم یه روش یونیفاید برای همه داشته باشیم. و مثلا من دو تا دانشجو داشتم تو سالهایی که تدریس میکنم که اینا شعر رو جذب میکردن، یه ایتالیایی و یکی ترکی هلندی. آنها به خاطر نوع شخصیتی و نوع مثلا علایقشون شعر رو ابزورب میکردن، ولی برای بقیه به دیوار میخورد و اصلا نمیشد. حالا یه تاچی میکردیم ولی به عنوان یه متد نمیشد استفاده کرد. و به نظرم دوست دارم نظر شما رو بدونم که این تجربه رو شما کردن که نوع برخورد ما و این تفاوت عالم مقالمون رو چجوری باید باش کنار بیایم. حالا البته میدونم که راه حل یکسانی وجود نداره، ولی در واقع
ممنونم، خیلی ممنونم.
خیلی ممنونم
که با ما در میون که گذاشتیم. من با شما کاملا موافقم. گاهی چیزها برای فارسی زبانان و غیر فارسی زبانان ممکنه فرق کنن. For the audience who probably haven't understand what خانم سیما ذوالفقاری has said, she shared some personal experience of teaching Persian.
Wasn't I speaking English?
Probably not as much as I can remember, but she shared some personal experiences of teaching one simple sentence in Persian in the class and the differences between the heritage students and non-heritage students grasping the essence of that simple question, which shocked her. And I said that I agree with you that we have to adopt the way for the classroom. But I would be more than happy to discuss this with you, Simajan, like later and speak about it. Punejan, can I just go over the chats and first of all say that thank you for these beautiful messages by Hind and Guzde and Negar Davari, and also I'm humbled, Prashant. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and I've learned a lot from you, I have to acknowledge. And there are some questions as well, I guess, right?
Yes, Nassim.
Hi everyone, thank you very much. It was an amazing talk and I learned a lot. I live in Madrid and I teach Farsi, actually basic level, but I've had experience while using music, and it depends also, of course, on the interest of the students. Some of them don't like that much literature, or they're not into literature and music neither. My question first of all is that have you had any experience teaching children or at basic level, adult at basic level. And I wonder if there is any research on a comparison between teaching or integrating music and poetry into teaching literature, Persian literature especially, at the cognitive level between adults and children.
That's a very good point, Nasim John. Thank you for bringing this up. I personally have the experience, and what I do is to adopt the level of the songs probably to the class and to the level of the level of the student. I mostly spoke here about teaching Persian literature, but probably you don't want to teach Ḥāfiẓ to a 6-year-old kid. So you can use songs, Persian songs, for that purpose. Khune ma dure dure, that when like I mentioned in the talk, and many other, you can teach salam with like salam haide. So there are so many songs that you can use for teaching. I was particularly focused on teaching Persian literature in language classes. So for adult versus like children, and like you can use songs, and there are a good body of literature on that, how to use it and how to adopt it. But it would be more towards the lyrics of the song and not the literature. But even in the case of literature, there are so many simple, easy things that you can gradually bring to the classes. در کارگاه کوزه‌گری رفتم دوش, that I try to pick among so many رباعیات خیام was one example of a رباعی that with which you can teach رباعی and everything, which doesn't have a lot of different words and phrases in it. I hope I answered you.
We have another question by Karaka.
سلام، روز بخیر. سپاسگزارم از این صحنه‌رانی زیبا. I am learning Persian language. Today elementary will end in a month and I am so excited. My course in Iran Undersecretariat in Ankara. I definitely get a lot of help from music while learning Persian. As a student is currently learning Persian, music helps me a lot of in my learning. As Üstad Yasaman, Üstad Shima, Üstad Naji said, constantly listening to Persian helps me to read Persian fluently. For example, with Shahram Nazeri, Mahsun Namju, especially Shahram Nazeri song Şeyda Shodam. Şeyda Shodam is a Mevlana's poem. Thank you. This feedback. متشکرم بهزاد برهان.
من از شما متشکرم. خیلی ممنونم. One interesting point about that شیدا شدم is that it is not for Maulana. It is just in the style of Maulana. شیدا شدم پیدا شدم. It is just in the style of Maulana. And this is the case for any, like you have to be so careful about choosing the poem. So this is not. I just forgot the question, or probably there hasn't been one. But thank you for sharing. I'm so happy that you're learning Persian with Shahram Nazeri and Namju. Mostly
Peyman Can has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Behzad Jan, for this great presentation. I don't have really any question because you clearly and nicely explained a lot of stuff. So I just have a comment. I think that we need people like you who are very familiar with this, with the music, and you are a singer and you know literature. So in this aspect of teaching Persian, we need people who are expert in these fields to at least to provide good content to make it, you know, into the classroom, because we need a lot of this stuff. But there was also a question that how we can enhance, you know, the learning of this material for from the task-based language teaching aspect. One of the way is to enhance and elaborate on the content. So, for example, we can use visual clues, we can use animation, we can use bolding of the words, we can supply subtitles, we can supply vocabulary besides the poetry or the song. And also the important thing that you also mentioned, that we have to find the level that is appropriate for our audiences. So for example, because there is this problem of overwhelming the cognitive systems, because it's multisensory and there are a lot of modalities involved. So we have to find the needs of our learners and find out at which level they understand, so that we can appropriately make this level to their cognitive system so that they can absorb this, I think, for example, one of the things that I did in my textbook using this poem from Marjan Farsad, which has animations. So she's singing this song, which is about immigration and diaspora, and then showing this picture. So it was very helpful for students to understand the content of the material, to understand at least what she's talking about. And because our classes are not homogeneous, they are like heritage and non-heritage together, it would be, for example, for those who are culturally familiar with the content would be easy, but also for the non-heritage would understand through these kind of visual clues. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much, Behzad, for this perfect talk.
Thank you so much for, first of all, attending. This is an honor for me, and thank you for your lovely comment. I'm humbled and honored that you, such a brilliant Ustad, is thinking this way. I'm humbled. And for the comment that you have about the multisensory approach and including subtitle and everything, while I was doing this research, starting 3 years ago, probably in 2021, now it's 4, yeah. Almost 4. I was thinking about some ways that we can improve it in during the time, probably a workbook or a website, a database in which you can use all of these sources together for a poem, or you can contribute to Ganjur or other courses, but there should be something. Because this question is always valid, that how can we know? We don't know all of these songs, or we don't know them. We have to just go and search for it. But if there's a database, just as you mentioned, that has see the poem from multiple perspectives. If there's a video of the poet himself, as in the case of Saye or Akhavan or Shafi Katkani, you can just link it to the poem, and it has huge impact on the language learner to see the poet itself is reciting the poetry in the way that they recite, and then adding music videos and musics and with subtitles, and then in that probably platform you can think about some ways that you can include post-listening activities even inside it. There could be lyrics, and then fill in the blanks can happen in the website. So it should be a project to include all of these things together. But it would be a long way to go for this. But thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you. Ali John, you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Borhan. This is really fascinating. I'm very hesitant to ask a question here. I'm actually coming from the other side. I'm a musician who uses actually, in fact, a lot of linguistic concepts, I think, in my teaching as well. I'm a professor as well. I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'm just coming from the musician side. In my teaching, I've noticed over the decades I've been teaching that it's much easier to teach when we just make someone in effect copy. We play a piece of music and say, play it like this, as opposed to having a piece of music. It's almost impossible to teach music from a piece of paper. And so I guess my question is, do you see the use of music as more a cultural element, kind of building a cultural fluency, or do you see it as kind of bringing the student closer to kind of some sort of, I don't want to say more Persianness or something, the distance, let's say, from a heritage speaker is not really, you can't overcome that. That's part of who you are. It never goes away. But so, I'm fascinated by this, and I love all of these concepts, but I'm just trying to see how do you see the use of music? Do you see it more as a way to kind of bridge that gap, or do you see it more as just, I mean, this is a literature talk, I think, originally. So I'm just fascinated by that.
First of all, thank you for attending the talk. It's an honor for myself. And that was a brilliant point that you said, like teaching based on the paper and like teaching this way. And like this is exactly the point of teaching literature, that this is not just like the paper, this is the poem in practice. And this is how. And regarding your question, I would say both. Because we are not only trying to teach the language and literature, but we are trying to, as you beautifully put it, like bridge this gap of the heritage students and non-heritage students who are learning Persian. And the fact that they are learning Persian, we have to be mindful of the fact that many of the students, heritage, non-heritage students who are learning Persian language, it is not for the language itself. It is for the culture, for the literature. And specifically because they can't travel to Iran. So if I want to learn French here in this like beautiful Montreal, it is for the purpose that I can order my beer like more easily and make conversations. But for the students who are learning Persian, it is not the case that they only want to say Bārbad Chef Juni or Chagormis. This is to just get as close as possible to the culture, and it is the culture that brought them here. And this is the point that I said I've learned from Ustad Samei, that Persian being a classical language means that we have Iranian studies department not for the language, not only because of the language. Otherwise, we have more languages with more probably speakers than Persian. So it is the culture that brought students. So like returning to your question, both for teaching purposes to just ease the learning and help students to memorize and learn grammatical things, vocabulary and everything, and also teaching the culture, Khayyam Bushehri, or like those probably music videos help even, and the culture is not limited to the music and the text. The way that Iranian probably enjoy the music is completely different from other like cultures, like the way that we shake our hand and like the way that like head, not hand, probably hand as well. The way that Iranian like like this is also part of the culture that you can teach and they can have a sense of. So I would say both with this, and it is really helpful in both matters.
Thank you so much. With that, I think we should close the day today, but I will give the podium back to Azita Jan to close the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pune Jan. Thank you so much, Behzad Jan, for this wonderful, very insightful and engaging talk. You know, honestly, it's very hard for me and Pune to close this session because there are many good questions, many engaging comments, feedbacks, and as Pune mentioned in the chat to one of the comments, perhaps we should have a round table about this topic in any conference, and that we get together and perhaps in person talk about this. And thank you everybody for your comments, your engaging discussion, and give us this opportunity that on Saturday we get together and talk about this important topic. I wanted to share with you that we have for the next lecture is March 1st. We have Dr. Pishbin talks about lesson from the age of Ajam, teaching Persian with the 17th century archives. We are looking forward to see you again, 1st of March, for another talk, and this one also related to the literature, and I am sure that we all engage and benefit from this talk. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next month again. Thank you so much.